You think awakening makes everything easy? Not even close. The wildest part? It might just break how you fall in love forever. Seriously. If you're not understanding why that happens, you're missing the profound truth about true connection. The biggest revelation comes at the end, so don't click away. You know, many people have a strange idea that becoming more spiritual means an end to all your challenges. In fact, the opposite is true. You'll likely face more challenges because you're more capable of handling them. But here's the really surprising part about spiritual awakening. It's not about floating around in endless bliss. Instead, you might find it almost impossible to fall in love again in the way you used to. That old idea of grand, sweeping emotions, the eager anticipation, the small dramas, and those sentimental thoughts all start to feel oddly fake. It's not that you've lost the ability to love, quite the opposite. Love actually becomes deeper, richer, and quieter. However, the old dance of expecting someone else to fulfill you and constantly pursuing them just doesn't work anymore. You've seen behind the curtain and you can't unsee it. You now understand that much of what's passed off as romance is really just two incomplete people trying to make a deal with each other. Once you've noticed this trick, it's incredibly difficult to be fooled by its charm again. So, here you are, fully awake, filled with wonder, and yet completely unable to fall in love in the conventional way the world taught you. What we usually call falling in love is often more like a strange kind of trance. You meet someone and suddenly your mind starts to spin a web, weaving together old memories, desires, and your own imagined hopes onto that person. Before you know it, you're not even truly relating to the individual in front of you, but rather to a colorful tapestry woven entirely from your own imagination. And then, caught up in your own creation, you declare, "I am in love." But think about how odd this is. Often, this so-called love thrives on distance, not real closeness. It seems to burn brightest when the person you desire is away, when things are uncertain, or when you're left in that delicious agony of longing. This kind of love feeds on a feeling of lack and hunger, rather than a sense of inner completeness. It's a kind of sweet madness, you see. Your ego is incredibly clever at hiding its loneliness, often calling it passion, dressing it up with beautiful words and shy glances. Yet deep down it's saying, "I feel incomplete and I need you to make me whole." But that isn't love, it's need. And as long as love is confused with need, it will flicker uncertainly, like a flame that only survives as long as it's fed by insecurity. Most of what we've been taught to admire as romance is precisely this: a hidden agreement, a quiet exchange. It's the unspoken promise, "I'll soothe your emptiness if you soothe mine." This is precisely why, after the first rush of excitement fades, so many people end up feeling disappointed, wondering if they ever loved at all, or if they simply made a silent deal without really understanding the terms. True awakening is not some mystical hidden thing. It's simply that moment when the fog lifts and you clearly see how the whole show works, the ego, desire, the endless games they play. You start to notice how what you once called love was often mixed up with the fear of being alone, with longing, or with your own projections. Once you recognize this, you can't blindly fall into it as you did before. The spell is broken, not because you reject love itself, but because you now clearly see its fake versions for what they truly are. To an awakened mind, the illusions that once seemed like genuine love no longer hold the same power. Where you once might have sworn you'd found your missing piece, you now see more clearly. Just another human being, with their own joys and their own difficulties. The magical idea of them as your rescuer, your other half, starts to fade away. With this new vision, the old magic of romance no longer sweeps you off your feet in the same way. What once felt like a burning fire now feels like mere smoke. Desires that once seemed overwhelming now appear fragile, like paper boats on a vast ocean. The thrill of the chase, the drama of waiting, the pain of uncertainty, all these now seem faintly ridiculous next to the profound calm you found within yourself. It's not that you dislike these things, it's simply that you no longer mistake them for love. Once it sinks in that the entire process is a kind of play, it becomes very hard to pretend it's deadly serious anymore. Of course, you can still enjoy the show, the laughter, the tears, the hugs, but you now understand it as theater, not the ultimate truth. So, what the world calls romance starts to lose its sparkle. An awakened person doesn't stop loving, but all the illusions surrounding it crumble. The game, once played with extreme seriousness, is now seen for exactly what it is, a game. And with that understanding, you step out of the trance and into a much larger, freer space. Once you've experienced this awakening, the entire feeling of love changes completely. You no longer carry that deep ingrained hunger to be made whole by someone else, because you now know that only you can truly fulfill yourself. You understand that you are already complete, shaped by the very life that brought you into existence. It's precisely this wholeness that makes the old way of falling in love so difficult, because what powered it before wasn't fullness, but emptiness. It was the ache of loneliness, the fear of being unseen, that gave so much intense feeling to what was called romance. But when you awaken, that emotional fire no longer burns in the same way. You're no longer desperately pursuing someone to mend a perceived hole in your heart, because that hole simply isn't there anymore. So, the old emotional drama, which once felt so exciting, now feels strangely empty. The intense storms that used to seem thrilling now just look like chaos when you've discovered the deep, steady calm of your inner being. You also start to notice how much ordinary romance relies on a certain kind of blindness. The small lies we tell ourselves, the illusions we willingly embrace. But awakening rips those blindfolds away. You see too clearly the hidden deals beneath declarations, the ego's subtle tricks, and the fears dressed up as deep devotion. And once you see these things, you can't go back to not seeing them. Love that is based on the fear of being alone simply has no fertile ground left to grow within you. Then there's an even harder truth. Awakening actually raises the standard of your heart. You no longer measure love by outward charm, beauty, or superficial compatibility. Without even trying, you find yourself drawn towards something far deeper. A genuine connection, a profound understanding that goes beyond appearances and touches the very core of who you are. And naturally, you'll notice that the circle of potential partners thins out considerably. Where once the world seemed full of romantic possibilities, suddenly there are only a very few. It's rare to meet someone who has truly faced their own inner struggles and emerged awake on the other side. Most people are still caught up in the old games. This is why it feels impossible, not because you can't love, but because you can no longer pretend. You can't go back to confusing need with real love, drama with genuine passion, or attachment with true devotion. You've simply outgrown it, just like you outgrow childhood games. And even though it might sometimes cause a pang of sadness, or you might miss the simpler rush of the old infatuations, you wouldn't trade back. You now know too much. Of course, this all sounds perfectly good in theory. You're whole, you're free, you no longer confuse hunger with love. Yet, there's another side to this story. When those familiar, exciting emotional rushes no longer move you, you don't instantly step into a state of pure bliss. And that in-between space can be painful. There's a deep feeling of being set apart, as if you no longer quite belong in the world you once navigated so easily. This isn't loneliness in the usual sense. You might still have friends, companions, even admirers. But there's a sharper kind of solitude. The realization that very few people are capable of meeting you at the profound depth you now experience. And if you try to slip back into the old patterns, to pretend you can just play along, it rings completely hollow. You cannot unknow what you now know. There's also a fear that perhaps the world will never quite satisfy this new hunger for truth, that the few truly connected souls will remain few, and that you will continue to carry your inner completeness into rooms where no one else has learned to hold such expansive inner space. Here, loneliness isn't just the petty absence of company, but the profound isolation of being genuinely understood by only a handful of people. This is why it feels impossible. Not because love has vanished from your life, but because your vision is now too clear. You cannot fall in love the way you once did, and sometimes that very clarity can feel more like exile than enlightenment. So, the awakened person carries a quiet desire in their heart, They would rather walk alone in truth than be trapped in an illusion. They refuse to sacrifice their inner peace for mere comfort, and they will not step back into the dramatic theater of superficial connections and hungry games. They have seen through the trick, the dazzling flash that captivates for a moment, only to quickly collapse into smoke and ashes. The wish of the awakened isn't for the old feverish kind of love, but for something much simpler and quieter. Love, if it comes, completely changes its focus. It moves from wanting and grasping to giving, from the intense drama of pursuit to the serene stillness of presence. It must come honestly, without masks, without force, truly free, not as a rescue mission, not as a possession, but as the genuine meeting of two whole beings who choose to share their freedom with each other. Anything less than this would be like a part of their soul still sleeping, and no amount of borrowed warmth is worth the price of closing their eyes to the truth again. There's no clinging in this new form of love, only the pure joy of sharing. There are no demanding bargains, but a delight that needs no outside reason to exist. It is love stripped bare of all theatricality, yet it is filled with a vastness that the old dramatic stage could never possibly contain. This is what awakened people wish for, though they seldom speak it aloud. Not a love that consumes, but one that expands. Not a love that ties you down, but one that sets you free. Better the clear quiet of solitude than the company of illusion. Better to wait, even if it takes a lifetime, than to give in to the old hypnotic patterns. For once your eyes have truly opened, your inner peace itself is far too precious to gamble away. Because peace is not some small consolation prize, it is the ultimate treasure itself. The profound stillness you've discovered within yourself is richer than any of the turbulent storms you once labeled passion. The old fire, all sparks and noise, now seems like a childish game compared to the quiet, steady flame that needs no external fuel. And why would you trade the consistent warmth of true inner completeness for the frantic fever of incompleteness? When you live this way, the company you keep grows sparse. It might be a long time before you encounter another person who has truly stepped out of the same illusion. Such meetings are rare indeed. But then, what is a diamond if not rare? Its very scarcity is what gives it its immense value. So, awakened individuals carry this vow, whether spoken aloud or not. Better to stand alone in clear understanding than to kneel again before shadows. To pretend otherwise would be to betray the incredible gift that awakening has placed in their hands. And so they wait, not with despair, but with deep patience, knowing that a truly authentic meeting is rare and therefore incredibly precious. What a strange gift awakening is, simultaneously a profound freedom and a unique solitude. The awakened would rather face the long silence of solitude than endure the noise of fake loves. They will wait as long as it takes, even if it means waiting for their entire life, because it means that when real love does finally come, it will not be born from a place of hunger, but from a place of true inner fullness, not from fear, but from profound freedom. And that kind of love, though exceedingly rare, is the only kind of love that can genuinely endure. You do not seek to be completed, for you know yourself to be already whole. You do not beg for things to last forever, for you have learned that all things are constantly changing and moving. And because there is no unspoken bargain, there is no emotional cage. You can choose to stay or choose to go, and the love itself remains free. It isn't about rescue, nor is it about possession, but purely about the profound joy of presence. It's about two beings who are not halves desperately searching for other halves, but individuals who are already complete and therefore capable of sharing without fear or expectation. When you no longer need love to rescue you, you are finally truly free to give it. When you no longer demand that another person complete you, you can meet them exactly as they are. Not as a fantasy, not as a savior, but as a fellow traveler on this mysterious journey of existence. This is precisely why the awakened don't fall in love, instead they rise in it. They are not dragged down by yearning and longing, but are lifted into a profound sense of freedom. And when love is no longer experienced as a prison, it finally becomes what it always was at its deepest root, the purest expression of life itself. When you are no longer enslaved by the desperate need to be loved, you discover that you are freer to love than you ever were before.